episode of the Running Tales podcast with me, Craig Lewis. This is the podcast where we aim to tell the extraordinary stories of everyday runners. We are, as you will know by now, part of the Everyday Athlete podcast network. So you will either be watching us live now across the social media platforms of Run, Try, Bike. If so, hello. Or you will be listening to this on the Everyday Athlete podcast network on Spotify, Apple, basically any other platform. So we are everywhere. And wherever you are, please give us a like, a review, a comment, let other people know all about what we do here, because this is a pretty special network. We've got a whole host of different shows across it, from the Enduring Minds podcast, where we talk about male mental health, to Joe Harden's Beyond the Finish Line, to talking about music on what's in your earbuds and what you're listening to when you're out there running. I know how amazing the What's in Your Earbuds playlist on Spotify is, because I recently did a 50k and there are not many races where you can switch from listening to the Mario Brothers theme tune to Counting Crows is Recovering the Satellites in one song click. But that's what you get on that playlist. It's pretty cool. It's everything that our ultra running community listen to. Anyway, like us, love us wherever we are and wherever you're listening, and our hearts go out to you if you can do that. Right, on to today's guest. It's Adam Lee. He plays a part within this network. People will know he appears on Food Fight Friday, but his main job, if you like, in the running world is as a trail runner of more than 10 years experience, and as the host of the Community Trail Running podcast, which if you haven't listened to, go and check it out. So without further ado, without more waffling from me, let's get Adam forward and have a chat about everything he does. Hey Adam, how you doing?
I'm great, Craig. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Thanks so much for coming on the other side of the microphone and joining us on Running Tales today.
I'm super excited to be here, and I've got Mario music in my head now, so I'm good to go.
Yeah, I mean, it gets you going. It's between that and DuckTales, which also comes on that playlist, as to what gets you running fastest. So, folks, if you don't know what we're talking about, check out the Everyday Athlete podcast network playlist, because it's eclectic as it can get. Now, Adam, you have an eclectic career, if I can use that word, within the world of running. But let's maybe rewind the clock back to when you first started trail running, because I think that was more than 10 years ago. And I suppose my first question to you is, before you started trail running, did you run at all, or was it straight from I don't really like this sport to I'm going to go out on those trails and smash it?
Yeah, no, I started like a lot of people on the roads. We had the TV station I worked at the time was a sponsor of the local marathon and half marathon. So they offered us up free entries, and I got into that and kind of chased times for a while, like a lot of people did. And then, 2014, I signed up for a short trail race. And within 10 meters of being on the trail, I was like, what the hell have I been doing on the roads the whole time? And not that I didn't mind and enjoy the challenge of chasing times, but the forest is just a different animal, and it leaves my soul feeling a whole lot different after a run. So the trails got me pretty quick. They set their hooks deep.
Yeah, I mean, I love trail running, but I'm running around relatively flat Northamptonshire in England, where there's some nice scenery, but it's nothing like what you've got where you are. So you're out in Alberta in Canada, and the scenery there must be pretty spectacular to get your hooks into.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started trail running, I was in Vancouver, so I did a lot of running in North Vancouver, where the mountains are there, and Mount Seymour's got a special place in its heart, in my heart, for sure. And we've only been in Alberta since the end of August, early September, kind of getting keys and moving back and forth. So this will be my first summer living in the Rocky Mountains. I've had the chance to visit a few times here and there, and it's definitely breathtaking and incredible. And it's that, it's hard to describe, but there's just a feeling you get when you get into the mountains, where you just seem more relaxed, and time kind of slows down. I don't know if I'm wording that quite right, but it's wonderful to be in the mountains and live the mountain life, and wake up in the morning and kind of try and remember the peak names and when you're looking around. And it's really special here. I've got a couple trails that I learned before winter set in, so I can I've been able to go out all winter on those and not be worried about getting too lost out there. But I'm looking forward to summer rolling around and getting to explore some more. We have great races in the region as well, and it'll be neat to be a part of that and see where they actually go instead of just being on a website somewhere for so long. It'll actually be real now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, oh, no, it sounds amazing. I mean, I went a long time ago, probably 20, 25 years ago, over to the Rockies and stayed in Banff out there. And we my brother and I had the idea of going up the mountain there, and we didn't want to go up the cable car, so we decided it is the simplest walk in the world, as you may know, from the center of Banff to go to this place. But somehow we managed to get lost on one of the trails, and we found a sign to a place called Goat Creek. So this is a really long-winded story, but we found a sign and we followed it for about 5 miles, and we were like, "Where is this Goat Creek? This sounds cool. It's on the signpost. It's got to be.
It's got to be there.
If we can't find the mountain, we'll go to Goat Creek. That sounds cool." So we got about 5 miles in. We didn't know if there were bears or who knows what else stalking us.
There's definitely bears.
yeah. And we came back, and it was really late, and we did manage to scoot in the cable car in the end up to the top of the mountain, and we did it the next day. And we were looking on a map, and Goat Creek was 25 miles away. Yet it was the nearest place on that signpost. And so my very long-winded way of getting to a question is, how easy is it to get lost in those trails out there? Or is it just me?
You know what, Craig? I don't think it's just you. There's a reason that I like to run with others as well. I'm definitely a better follower than leader when it comes to exploring new trails, for sure. And you know what, too, to be honest with you, from working in news for so long and doing the stories of missing hikers and missing runners and that kind of thing, I've got not PTSD because I didn't go through the stress myself, but there's definitely an overbearing stress to, like, you can't be the one that gets lost. Like, you can't be on the news. You cover the people on the news all the time. Don't be the person that ends up on the news. So I am pretty careful when I explore, but and on the same vein of being lost, I always joke that you're not lost until search and rescue shows up. Until then, it's just an adventure. So I've had plenty of adventures over the years, for sure. Most of the time we get where we're going, and to be honest with you too, it's a little bit of my fear here in Crow's Nest Pass, Alberta, where we moved, because the population's quite a bit smaller. So Vancouver, you could kind of get into the North Shore, and I mean, don't get me wrong, you can get lost anywhere, but generally there's a lot of traffic. Whereas here, people tell you, like, "Oh, you'll be the only one on that trail." It's like, I better know where I'm friggin' going then.
Yeah, Adam, I can get lost on a park run with 200 other people. So who knows what would happen to me?
Right? It depends how shiny the squirrels are. I mean.
And the other question I suppose I'd have for someone running where you are is do you have a bear story? Have you come across many out there?
No, so thankfully I don't have any bear stories yet. It sounds like everyone who runs in the pass ends up with a bear story at some point.
Yeah.
My boss, I work in the back of Spry, which is like a local outdoor shop, and the back half is like a distribution warehouse for a bunch of outdoor brands here in Canada. And so it's a family run business. My boss, Jamie, and his father, Ian, and his wife, Susan, like it's their family business. So Jamie and Ian, just before I started last year, one of my first runs out with them, they were telling me a story of how they got bluffed by a great big grizzly bear, and it was terrifying. I'm like, I've actually enjoyed running all winter because the bears are sleeping. I'm like, you know what? That's not so bad. Like, I'll go out -20 if there's no bears. So although I've heard a few cougar stories this winter as well. So there's lots of animals around here. My closest experience with a grizzly bear was driving home back to Crow's Nest Pass after our move. Shortly after, I saw mama bear and 2 cubs run across the highway. And Craig, I don't even know how close I was, but I can't even explain to you how quick this bear covered the field and then the road and then the field and was back in the bush. I'm like, oh my God, they move so fast. I would not want to be outside this car.
I mean, for runners out there, how much of a real thing is that? Because for me, even if I'm going to go out into what's the middle of nowhere here, the scariest thing I'm going to potentially come across is an adder, so I'm pretty safe. But you're talking cougars and bears, and that's real stuff.
Yeah, totally. And like, I've been here for 6 months now, and there's this. So quick little history lesson of Crow's Nest Pass. It is 5 different little townships that amalgamated back in the 70s or 80s. We live in Coleman, which is at the west end of Crow's Nest Pass, and then there's the little place at the beginning. There's Bellevue and Hillcrest. They're at the east end, and in Hillcrest, I'm told there's a trail there where like everyone, oh yeah, there's the cougar that lives there. You'll see them sometimes, and I'm just like, what the hell? And we all carry bear spray. It's like it might as well be mandatory. You're not leaving the house without it, and especially if you're by yourself, you definitely need to be loaded up. And if you're with a group, you're conscious and mindful of what you're supposed to do if you come across any of these things. So it's very much a real concern. I'm sure as I'm here a little bit longer, I'll get an idea of how real the threat is, if you will. But just chatting with my boss and that last year, like it's clearly something that happens for people, so we have to be prepared.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose the only thing is the old adage that you don't have to be able to outrun the bear, you just have to be able to outrun the slowest person in your group.
Yeah, exactly, right. The problem with that though is if you go run with fast people.
yeah, I'd never do that.
No, then you need sticks for their ankles or something, but that starts to get kind of dark,
So in terms of your own trail running experiences and so on, you've obviously been doing it for 10 years now, as we said before. What sort of distances and so on do you go on? Are you looking at the ultra distance or something a little bit quicker, or just whatever race catches your attention at the time?
I think a little bit of all of that for sure. Yeah, I had the hook to get into like a 50K and that kind of thing earlier on, and scratch that bug for sure. And like I like 50K for a distance now, because you kind of, after you've done it a few times, you sort of have an idea of what commitment that kind of takes. And if you want to go fast, obviously training will be different than just trying to make it to the finish. But I think I have a much more higher appreciation of just finishing races now, so that can be a fun experience to go out and just kind of do it on your own terms. And then the last couple of years, I've really enjoyed relays and running as part of a team. That's been a total hoot. We have a big one here where there's 7 legs. It's called Sinister 7. You can run the whole 100-mile yourself, or you can have a relay team up to 7 members. We did that last year, and it's fun because it turns into chaos. Nobody knows when they're running because you have to wait for the next person. And depending on the weather, someone might be way off of what their goal was. And you're out there at each of the transition stations with all the other teams running it. And yeah, like the mass chaos of it all was super fun. So I really enjoyed that. And, whenever your leg is, you finish that. And then the rest of the time you're cheering on your team and that sort of thing. So it's fun to be involved in it all like that. And, personally too, I've actually enjoyed going back to the shorter distances a little bit, like 20, 30K, and just blowing myself up and seeing how that can go. So like, I think, if something scratches my itch, I'll do it. I'm not like, I have to run this distance, I have to do this. It's just kind of like what comes up. And especially over the last few years, I've become a lot more relaxed about choosing races, about going to races. I used to be, to be honest with you, I used to be much more prepared, which was probably better. And now if I have a race the next day, I'm just kind of like throwing my stuff in a ball and like figuring it out on the fly. So I have enjoyed being a little bit more relaxed around choosing races and getting to the race weekends. But I think ultimately I still have to try a 100-miler. That's on my bucket list. And that will require some more stringent training and making sure I stick to a plan. But in the meantime, I'm just trying to enjoy the sport as much as I can and just have the fun that comes along.
Definitely. No, I think there's something to be said for entering these and enjoying these slightly more different and quirky races, whether that's a relay or whatever. I've got one coming up next Sunday, which is it's actually complete opposite to a trail race. It's through London, but basically what we'll be doing is it's called going around in circles, and we'll be following the Circle Line on the London Underground, basically
Cool.
running from in teams of two. One of us will run to the next station while the other one jumps on the tube and goes on the tube, and then we'll swap until we've
I
done all
love that.
27 stations. So it's just, so I mean, there's nobody cares who wins that. I'm not even sure they're going to be having a winner particularly. Maybe they'll look who did it the quickest, but no one really cares. It's just so much fun, and I think it comes down to why. Well, I think maybe not with the road running, because I think with road running people kind of want to run fast. Most road runners want to run fast, but with the sort of trails and the ultras, unless you're elite, we all sort of just want to get round and have a bit of fun.
Yeah, 100%. I agree, Craig. There's like, the equivalent of running like a 3:45 marathon on the trails. Like no one cares. You know what I mean? Like no one, like you said, unless you're at the front, your time doesn't matter. None of it matters. Like, so you kind of have a little bit more relaxed outlook on the times, which I enjoy too, because it was fun chasing those times for a while, but it's nicer to just kind of enjoy the activity for what it is for me at this point.
No, I kind of agree, and I mean, this is never an event which I'll be anywhere near, or most of us will be. But I'm looking forward to the updates on Barclays over the next couple of days, because that's obviously kicked off, and it's the first time in months that I'm actually disappointed that I deleted my account on X, because
that was the only place to follow that race.
Exactly, and now I'm thinking I knew there was a reason why I had that account. But yeah. So those fun races are, they're really cool. But you've just come back from a pretty epic race yourself. You've run Moab Run the Rocks in Utah. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was my first kick at the can of a stage race, which was really cool. We did. I'll screw up the distances if I try to get them exact. So basically, it was like 20K the first day, 40K the second day, and 20K the third day, give or take a little there. And the desert was a whole new experience for me. It's called Run the Rocks, and that seems pretty self-explanatory, but I didn't know what to expect when you get there, and then you literally just run on the rocks the whole time. So it was a different challenge than running over rocks and roots like we have in the PNW or even here in the Rockies, and that was interesting. The sun, we only had maybe 10, 12 degree days kind of thing. And so I've learned and Jason's been trying to teach me this stupid formula for figuring out Celsius to Fahrenheit. I still screw it up, but I think it was around 50 some odd degrees Fahrenheit. So 10, 12 degrees Celsius. Still managed to get a sunburn because the sun just hits different there.
Yeah.
But it was so fun to try a different challenge. It was so neat to run through the desert, and you'd pop up over these little rocks, and you wouldn't think that the vistas would change that much, but it did. It would open something up, and you'd see off into the distance in a way you couldn't before, and just like majestic and red and just incredible to be part of that landscape and being able to pick out runners so far away, because you're not used to no trees or anything in between, so you could see forever in different directions. And the Trans Rockies Race Series, Huda's the race director there, and they do just like a sensational job of hosting, of making it feel like a community celebration. They have Chillville, which they call the finish line, and they've got fires set up everywhere, and every aid stations in the finish line area has like dairy free and gluten free, and they do a great job of trying to think of everyone. They had all the beer and seltzer for people that were running, for people that were supporting. It didn't matter. You were just supposed to be part of the party. And then each night that we did the awards in the evening from 5:30 to 6:30, they called that happy hour. It was the same thing. They had drinks for everyone there. They did a bunch of prizes. You couldn't even like get through the door without having an opportunity to win something. Like they really, really, really just try to make it a fun celebration of our sport in an incredible place to actually partake. So it was an honor to be a part of it. It was such a unique challenge to take on, which was awesome. My stomach doesn't always travel great, so I had some issues getting in calories the first couple of days, but still managed to make the most of it. And I don't think I would love to try like a different stage race. It's hard, as you can imagine, as we kind of joked before we went on air, like we all have our real lives and our real jobs. So you know, time is finite. So it's hard to like, oh, I would go back because I would love to experience another one. But I would definitely put it on the list of recommendations to check out because it was just such a fun event and so well run. So if you're ever thinking about getting to the desert and wanting to try a stage race, like Moab Run the Rocks it's fantastic. It was so fun.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant, and like you say, it's got that lovely element of community to it. I think you said it's your first stage race. How did you find getting up the next day after doing a long run and going out on tired legs? It's something I've never done, so I've always wondered what it must be like.
It's totally fun. I did Squamish 50, the 50-50 a few years back. So that's not a stage race, but you do 50 miles the first day and 50K the second day. So I've had experience getting my butt out of bed and doing it again. Which in like, for lack of a better term, like you just feel like a pro, you know, like you're going to bed and you have to get up and you have to run again. Like, it's like, all right, it's race day part 2, race day part 3. Like, so I really liked that. And because I was having a hard time getting calories in, I'm actually kind of proud of the effort I put forward because I had to manage the weekend and make sure that I could get through. So I did manage that and sort of kept myself in one piece enough to get through all 3 days. I would love if I get the chance to take on another stage race, I would love to use the lessons I've learned, maybe show up a little bit earlier and figure out my food so that by the first day I can actually push as hard as I'd like to. But it's, you know, you learn little things you need to do to take care of yourself. We had a hot tub at the hotel that we soaked in each night, which was awesome. And the 40K day was the second day, and that's when I was feeling the worst. And my friend that I went down there with, Sabrina, like her stomach wasn't feeling great either. So we just hung out for like pretty much the whole day, took a bunch of photos, went slow, and that really helped make sure that day 3 we were able to take the start line strong. So it's all those little lessons you put forward and you take out of it. And I managed to manage my body enough to be able to feel pretty strong all 3 days, considering the diet and everything wasn't great. But yeah, like Craig, I'm sure you're the same way. Sometimes you show up at a start line, you don't know how you're going to finish or how you're going to feel, but you manage how you feel in the moment to get through the day.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things, isn't it? About, I mean, any kind of running, whether it's road running, trail running, ultra running, the harder the challenge is, and that kind of depends where you start. For some people, a 5K on a flat surface is the biggest challenge they've ever taken on in their lives. So whatever's a challenge for you, you're going to reach that stage where you think, I am not going to do this. This is a disaster. Why did I get out of bed this morning? I've wasted months of training and all that stuff. And we kind of, I suppose, that's where we dig deep and get through, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I had a friend many years ago when I was running in Victoria who said, like, it doesn't matter what the distance is. It always feels like when you get to the finish line, you're like, that's all I had. So I think that's just the way it goes, you know?
Oh, and I've had so many conversations with people, and some of these people who are running 100, 200-mile races, and I'm sure you've had the same, where you ask them what their hardest race, and they'll just turn around and they're hesitant. They'll go, 5K, hate the 5K, can't stand it. You have to run all out. I'm absolutely exhausted by the end of it. Give me a 200-miler any day of the week.
Yeah, 100%. It's all in the abuse you want to put on yourself, I guess.
Yeah, that's it. You prepared for this. I mean, you sort of said it makes you feel like a pro. You prepared for this quite seriously as well. You've got a coach on board. We will obviously talk about the Community Trail Running podcast in a bit, but you had a segment on that where you were talking about how your training and stuff was going. Is that something you've done before, or was that new for Run the Rocks?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to work with coaches when I did the Squamish 50-50 back in 2021, and that was like a game changer. It's not cheap, so I can completely appreciate that it's a bit of a stretch for folks if you can work with a coach and you have the time to like figure out someone who knows how to work with you as well, and you can get that rapport with someone. It's invaluable. I found in 2021, basically, I learned that you don't have to be perfect. That's what the coach kind of taught me was, like life happens. None of us are able to necessarily print off a calendar and stick to it 100% because life happens and you have to give yourself permission to miss a workout or adjust your workouts or this and that. So and then of course you learn how to properly hydrate and fuel and that sort of thing too. Like there's obvious lessons that you will take in, but it really allowed me to humanize myself, to be honest with you. So then working with Andrew towards Moab Run the Rocks, I had a little bit of my own history with working with coaches and how I wanted to approach that. And Andrew obviously coaches different than my coaches before. So it was fun to work within a new system and learn a little bit about how someone else would teach and carry me through training. So it was a ton of fun. We got to do the Miller Minutes out of it, which you had alluded to on Community Trail Running as well, which I had such a fun time. I think I wanted to sort of share that experience and show people like what it's like to work with a coach. And I think we found a balance within a short episode to show like what it's like one-on-one, but then also he sort of took the lessons from me and zoomed out to give it to what it would be like for all trail runners. So I think if you have the means, working with a coach can be a huge game changer. And looking into coaching is, you don't owe anyone anything. And a coach, I've only chatted with so many on my podcast and that sort of thing, but I will say that one of the main commonalities is that they all want to make sure that you're a good fit. No coach would just like take your money and have you feeling as though you're not getting anything out of it, or you're not in a good relationship with your coach. They want to make sure that one-on-one is the best possible fit, and then build from there. So find someone that you gel with and take it forward. And I think you'd probably be really impressed with, one, where you're already at, but also two, what you're capable of with a little bit of guidance and some instilled confidence.
That was kind of going to be my next question, because it's just how much further can that take you? I've always, well, not that I'm ever going to be great, but I've wondered about it for myself. If I did nutrition right, if I actually trained properly, if I did fartlek and hill sessions and all this stuff properly, if I actually ran long and slow rather than starting out running long and slow and ending up running at my normal long pace, and all of that good stuff that you're supposed to do, if I stretched, if I took the salt tablets and everything, how much better would I be? And I suppose you've listen, I'm sure not everything went perfectly to plan, because it never does, but how much better did you feel? How much of a better runner were you from having had that coaching experience?
And that's just it too. And I think it kind of goes even just as I was saying, allowing myself, like giving myself permission to be human. That is not only on the calendar and within your training, but also on the day of, right? Like you can take that step back. And if I didn't have the coaching and then did the Run the Rocks the same way, like day 2, I would have died. And not like literally, but you know what I mean? I would have went way too hard. I know I would have blown up. I couldn't get food in. And just having the experience I had with the coaches and that sort of thing, I knew that I was under eating. I knew that there wasn't enough in me, and that I would have to like take that out of another bucket, like, okay, if I can't run as fast, that means I'm going to have to slow down. Or if I can't eat as much, that means I'm going to have to slow down, because you can't take from everything and not give it back. So those are sort of the lessons. And then like, honestly, Craig, like the intervals and the fartleks and that sort of thing, like Tuesdays was my interval day. And it gets to the point where you look forward to that. And the coach also makes it so you don't have to come up with what that workout will look like. Like, is it going to be short effort? Is it going to be long effort? Like I love the excitement of Tuesdays on my calendar, working with a coach and seeing like, okay, when am I bringing my lunchbox to? Like, what are we going to do? What work are we getting done? And the same kind of thing. Like, I feel like a pro after, I did the work. Like this is all going to come to fruition on race day. So, like you'll never get to do the amount of training that you want to, like you'll never, we're in that point in life where there's too many other things that we have to take care of. But I think working with a coach will give you the biggest, closest experience to feeling like you're treating yourself like a pro. Like, this is how I can maximize my effort. And that's that, like, Yeah, it's really fun. It doesn't, like, as Jason and I often joke on Food Fight Friday, like you're going to be sprinting and fighting for 97th position or whatever it is. Like, it doesn't matter ultimately overall, but it's the fulfilling feeling you get afterwards. There's a little bit more of I guess you don't have the question after, like, what if I did this? What if I did that? It's like, okay, I'm doing those things now. So
yeah, let's be honest. At the end of all of this, we're not Kilian Jornet or Elliot Kipchoge or Usain Bolt or whoever, whatever the distance is. We're doing this for enjoyment, and we're racing mainly against. If we're racing at all, we're racing against ourselves. So you're just trying to do the best job you can do for yourself to get through that race. But I was intrigued there actually, and I think it's once you say it, you kind of think, well, that's obvious. But you were talking about a coach not necessarily being there to make you go the fastest you can possibly go at every single moment, but being there to make sure you're doing the right thing in that moment to get you where you need to be or to the end of that run.
That's just it. And like, we get so built up on the race and the goal and that sort of thing too. And like back in 2021, my coaches, one of the biggest lessons that I took from it was actually afterwards. And they're like, once you finish that race, like the next 2 weeks, you might go through crushing depression. Like there's things that you just don't think about as a runner that they've done, that they've experienced, and it's the whole package. So someone telling you that you're going to be depressed doesn't mean that you won't be depressed, but you'll at least understand why. And in that context, it was pretty funny too, because you've been like, for Squamish, I trained for like 9 months, and you put a lot into it, a lot of your time and your effort and that sort of thing. And he's just like, you could be very depressed, you could be cranky, and you should probably buy Sheena some flowers because you might not be great to be around. And that's, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, like you could just be conscious of those sorts of things. And it's the same thing when it comes to running and being in the moment. Like, one of my best training runs for Squamish 50/50 was a 50K day that I was supposed to go out and do. I brought 2 friends with me who had never run 50Ks, but they had trained with me a ton leading up to that. They both finished that day and I didn't. And the lessons I learned in DNFing that day are why I can manage myself as well as I can now, which isn't to say like, I was cramping up, I didn't eat enough. Like, there's definitely, but it also gets rid of the question marks. Why did I cramp up? I wasn't eating, right?
Yeah.
Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, you can at least, so when you look back, you've got enough of the tools and the skills to recognize maybe where you could do better. And that will always stay the same. We will always be able to do better.
Yeah. Oh no, I love it. I'm definitely going to have to get myself a coach at some point and see how it goes. Really. Perhaps I just need that next massive challenge to bring myself to.
Totally. And you don't have, like, don't sorry to interrupt, but don't make yourself feel like it has to be something that you've never accomplished either. Like, if you want to run a 5K disgustingly fast and feel like you hate yourself for 5 kilometers, work with a coach and do that. Like, you never know. It doesn't have to be this giant thing. It can be whatever you want to have fun and learn more about.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think the biggest coach I've had in my life, or coaches I've had in my life, actually, are the people I've chatted to on this podcast. And I've learned so much from so many different people who've done so many different runs. And I suppose that neatly leads me on to talking about community trail running.
Wonderful segue.
It was almost like a professional segue, wasn't it? That
nailed it. You nailed it.
So yeah, tell us how you started out doing the podcast. I think it was back in 2021.
So that actually comes right out of Squamish. The Coles Notes version of this is, I worked in TV, was done working in TV, like mentally I was over it. Wanted to re-educate, so I went online. We have a school that was out of province for me at the time, now in province at Athabasca, where they specialize in online. That's all they do. So I got my Bachelor of Management. Took me about 5 years to do that. So to celebrate being finished that, I signed up for Squamish 50/50. That was the COVID year. So it was actually the Whistler race that I signed up for, but permits and this and that. And my coaches had access to this and that. So I ended up doing Squamish 50/50, which was amazing. And then I finished. And as coach told me, I had a bunch of time on my hands, and didn't quite know what to do with it all. I had written newsletters in the past about music. I'm not a super knowledgeable person about music, but I know what I liked. So that's kind of what I wrote. That was many years past. And then I thought that I'd like to write something running related and get other people involved. So I wrote my Squamish 50 tale because that was where I wanted to start. But I knew starting that it was, I was reaching out to community members to get like tips for running your first race or that sort of thing. But I wanted it not from me, because like I'm not an expert. That's not who I am. That's not how I try to frame myself. I try to have people on who are experts, and they can frame themselves as that, and we can dive into their knowledge. But it all just stemmed from that. Basically, I had so much time on my hands to figure it out, and started writing a little bit. Bought a mic that was on sale at Best Buy or whatever, and having worked in media for many years beforehand, I was comfortable with the editing process, with coming up with questions and that sort of thing. So actually asking them myself was a little bit of a unique experience, and that was kind of fun to get into. But even from the very first one, I had my hypnotherapist from a few years before on at the time, just talking about sleep, and that's what she had helped me with. But it was just super fun to have a conversation and share that. And my episodes are 15 to 20 minutes long, kind of thing, because that's my attention span. So it just kind of like worked into my wheelhouse like that. And the more you do it, the more fun you have, the more people kind of come out of the woodwork and like, you should have so-and-so on, you should have so-and-so on. Like, okay. And it just kind of rolled from there. So it was just having too much time on my hands is how it started. And then it was just too much fun to stop. And now, we're 3.5 years in. We've been putting out episodes every week for, I think this is week 68 that we've nailed each week. So that's pretty cool. We get involved with the film festival. We've done specials like that, and it's just and Craig, you alluded it to already with learning lessons from folks that you've had on your show, and it's just really fun to be part of this community and chat with people from across the world about our silly little sport.
Yeah, and I mean, first of all, I was going to ask you about the sort of decision to do it 15 to 20 minutes, because that almost looked like a very deliberate decision, whereas I just waffle on forever and get to tell stories about Goat Creek and so on. But yeah, I just wondered if that was the idea, was like, right, okay, yeah, we have got a longer form platform here, but actually maybe we don't want to overdo it.
Yeah, and it ties into me not being the expert either. I don't want to frame myself as that either. So I think the interview style.
You just got to embrace it, Adam.
Excuse me. Don't worry. I embrace my ignorance in many ways, Craig. Don't worry. But the show was, especially just with my background in media and how I wanted to do it, it just made the most sense to sort of be short features of other folks. And the idea was always kind of to build some interest, and hopefully people at home would listen and think, hey, I need to check out some more of that myself. So that's kind of the jumping off point. And I think it's working. We've messed around over the last like 8 months. We've got a longer version now. I work with Chantal Erickson. We do the long run together, and that scratches a little bit of a different itch, and that's super fun working with her. She is like a dynamo in the trail running community, in her own community. So that's an honor for me just to work with her. That's kind of why I started. Like, I need to work with Chantal. How do I do that? I guess I have to start a show and we'll do it together. So it was nice to be able to have the longer version with her. We've got, the 15 to 20 minutes that I still host. And then the Miller Minutes is like 5 to 10 minutes, which I think is nice and digestible. And we've just started the Crossing Lines podcast, which is a collaboration. I'm not on the host side of that, but working with the Crossing Lines guys they just want to make trail running more diverse, more accessible. They're looking to get more BIPOC people on the start lines. And it just seemed like a real natural fit to under the community trail running belt and to collaborate with them. So we kind of have now where if you want to listen for a certain amount of time, we probably have something here that you can listen to, but my show will probably always be that like 15 to 20 minutes. Let's focus on our guest.
Yeah, no, it is a nice sort of chunk of time that you can listen to almost on any run, or when you've just got that spare bit of time. Whereas I think Running Tales is probably an investment, but hopefully we have got enough of an invested audience. But what love as well is that you kind of have a real variance of runners from all levels, all different communities, and so on. I'm assuming that was obviously a conscious thing as well to go into.
Yeah, I knew it's the same sort of thing too. Like I'm not going to feature a bunch of pros and that sort of thing. I love when someone has time to come on and chat about their experience, whether they won the race, whether they finished at the back. But I don't have the base of knowledge either to be like, this big race was happening. Let's go after these people. Like the community is what makes this sport as enjoyable as it is for me, and obviously that's made up of all walks. So that was always going to be the way, is just if you're involved in trail running or trail running adjacent, like a hypnotherapist, she wasn't a trail runner, but those lessons can kind of apply. And same thing, I think there's enough people that are focused on maybe those other high impact, high visibility kind of athletes and people in our space that it's nice to, and you guys do the same thing, obviously at Running Tales, but just the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network in general, right? Like it's about showcasing what our community is made of, which is a lot of incredible people. And maybe they're not going to be at the front of the pack or sponsored athletes, but they're still doing wonderful things. And it's great to be able to share anyone's story like that.
Yeah, a friend of mine, shout out to Paul Carpenter if he's listening at any point. I think on one of the previous episodes, I've got this thing at the moment where I start wanging on about, please don't talk about VO2 max. I know it's important, but I just don't want to hear about it. And he's made me a t-shirt. He's made me a t-shirt which says don't tell me about your VO2 max. I want to know why you run. And I think that kind of sums up the sort of podcast that we try and do.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, having said that, Craig, that is one of those things to feeling like a pro. I really want to do a VO2 max test. I've never done one. I really, really, really want to, but I completely understand your point.
Oh, Adam, I'm a huge hypocrite because I'll say that, but I'd love to know I'd love to do the same as well. And we've got a friend of ours in my wife's does a running club, and he is currently trying to qualify for the to join the British Army, and he needs to do a beep test, and we're helping him reach that level. I'm like, I want to know. I'd love to know what I'm doing on the beep test. So I think despite doing that, I still have that bit of competitive edge in there to want to know where these things rank and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I think you've already mentioned it too, but it's not an external competition. You just want to know what you're capable of.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk to you as well about the film festival and how that came about. And I mean, I've kind of assumed it's come out of the podcast, but I don't actually know that. So yeah, tell me about the film festival and how that works and where it came from.
Yeah, so I mean, without the podcast, it probably doesn't happen, of course, but it was mostly good old Matthias Eichler at the film festival. He's a race director down in the States as well. He's also a podcast host. I don't remember how him and I started interacting, but I'm pretty sure it had to do with our podcasts. Just a super friendly, awesome German dude living in Washington. Got along with him great online. And then he mentioned, I think it was on LinkedIn, that he's taking over as executive producer of the film festival, and he was super excited about it. And I had just reached out and said, if you guys are coming to Vancouver, let me know how I can help, be involved. Sounds great. And he wrote back and said, why don't you host it? And that's how that started in Vancouver. We had an awesome first year. The community was right into it, from our amazing local sponsors to people wanting to come out and actually celebrate the sport. And then the second year, our sponsors were so happy with the first year. And then we had friends, Jason and Sabrina in Alberta, that were like, if you wanted to try and do some shows here, you could crash out at our place and see if it goes. And our sponsors were like, if you do it in Alberta, we are on board. So we expanded last year. 4 more shows, and then this year we've added 1 more here in Alberta. And it was just like it's all come along very organically, and mostly just because of the podcast for sure, but also because of the great connections that we have, and Canada's not a small place. Western Canada is still quite large, so to be able to bounce between Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton, and then our smaller spots here at Crowsnest Pass and Canmore and Jasper speaks to what a great running community it is here. How much fun and how much together time the trail running community really wants to spend, and finding ways. The coolest thing I found about the Trail Running Film Festival the first year, and it literally took getting through the night for it to sink in, but like, we're in a theater of 350, 360 people, something like that. We're all fans of the sport, but no one was there to run. So we actually just got to enjoy and celebrate the sport together. Nobody had an agenda. Nobody had to get anything in. And that really stuck with me. So the second year, we had like a burlesque act open in Vancouver, a total cold open surprise for everyone. And this year we've got magicians booked. We've got another burlesque act in Edmonton booked. So we're really trying to lean into just making it, we're leaning into the word festival is what we've kind of said from the day one, but also just like, this is one of the few chances on the calendar where we all get together and we aren't running. So let's make it as special of a night as possible. And that's kind of where we're at with it. So it's really fun to be a part of that and to organize it and have the backing from the Film Fest too. They love what we're doing. They're a pleasure to work with. All the theaters have been super fun to work with, and to go back for a second year and to have so many people so excited for our event and for us coming back has felt really good. So it's just, it's growing on its own. It's a lot of fun. And I couldn't imagine, I still can't believe that it happens the way it does, but like, you send a message and you say yes, and here it goes. And now we just keep doing, we keep celebrating. And I'm really looking forward to this year. I think it's going to be the best year yet. That's what you want an event organizer to say, I think. But yeah, it's going to be such a hoot, and it's been nothing but fun so far.
Yeah, and you're on the very cusp of this year's festival, aren't you?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We just like, it's perfect because they launch mid-March, and we usually start in the very beginning of April in Vancouver. So it gives the festival enough time to figure out anything that if it needs to be figured out. And by the time we host, it's super simple and straightforward, which I love. But they do an amazing job of making sure the hosts have everything they need to make sure that these events are community celebrations and not community shit shows.
What was it like going from being, it's very different being nice and safe in your living room behind a microphone chatting on a podcast to standing in front of those 350 people and presenting to them. What was that like? How did you find it?
It was definitely a little nerve-wracking, and that was the joke I made with Matthias back then too. It was like, well, I speak into my mic in a closet, so how hard can it be to chat with 350 people on a stage? Like, but I'm a bit of a ham. I'm a fairly outgoing person, so it was actually I don't know if easy is quite the right word, but it felt fairly natural. My wife, the very first year, before the show, because you go out on the stage and you do your practice, and I did my practice, and she gave me a couple notes that were really, really helpful, and we've just been kind of running with it ever since, Craig. And I've made this point on multiple casts. It seems like no one in the world knows what the heck they're up to at any point in time, so you might as well be one of the blind and hope that you can be a leader.
Yeah, definitely. Adam, I can't possibly have a chat with you without talking about the other hat you wear as part of this network on Food Fight Friday at the aid station with our mutual friend Jason Bahamundi. That is a tour de force of a podcast, isn't it? Do you want to quickly explain to people who haven't listened what it is and how it works?
So I have to start any conversation about Food Fight Friday that this is like Jason's genius. He's just brought me along for the ride, which is amazing. Him and I have joked many times that if we'd have known each other as 12-year-olds, we would have been in detention constantly together, because that's just kind of our personalities. But Food Fight Friday at the aid station, the whole point is we give each other 3 foods that you would see at a hypothetical aid station, and we'll set it up so you're at mile whatever this or that of a race, but basically you have to choose one food to eat, you have to choose one food to carry, and you have to choose one food to pitch. We started off giving each other terrible choices, so you had to pick something awful, and then as life happens, and if evolve or die, as they say, and our show has evolved for sure. I was really touched when Jason brought up some like Puerto Rican foods from his childhood, and it's those human things that make the show, I think, as interesting as it is, outside of like the silly food choices. But him and I just have a great time bantering. And then from like a social media point of view, talking about food gets way more interaction than anything you could ever imagine. So I love the aftermath of a show with him. You've got people chiming in about what they'd choose, what they wouldn't choose. Some people try and break the rules and say, well, I would change this to that. And I'm always like, you can't change anything. That's not allowed. But yeah, it's just good fun with Jason, who's like a really good human being. I'm so happy that our paths have crossed, not only like from Food Fight Friday and getting to work with him, but he'll reach out, how you doing, do you need a hand with anything, just how's life. Like he's a really great person that I'm grateful to have in my life. And then the fact that we get to just be goofballs with each other every 2 weeks is so fun.
Yeah, well, we have about 8 minutes of Running Tales left, so I am going to try and embrace my inner Jason Bahamundi, which basically means I'm going to put my cap on backwards, because anyone who's...
Oh my God, Jason?
There he is. And I'm going to try and give you 3 things for the aid station on a trail run. Set the scene. It's a cold, rainy, miserable day. We're in the UK after all.
I was going to say it must be a UK day. Okay, perfect.
It must be. Basically, you're doing a 50K. You're about halfway through. And these are the options I'm going to give you. Owen says from the UK, Jason's UK.
Sir Jason Bahashire.
Yeah. I was going to mess this up anyway. Now I'm really confused. So, yeah, I am going to tell you what these things are. And then I guess part 1 is you have to tell me whether you even know what they are, because I've gone for some traditional British foods.
Oh, I love this.
They're offering you some strange stuff on this aid station. It's very filling. It'll keep you going. It is cold. So fish and chips, obviously, you know that. That's a nice, easy one. Mm-hmm. The second thing is haggis, which, if you don't know, I'll explain what haggis is in a minute. Because we have a Scottish man on our aid station, and the third thing is spotted dick. So
okay, we're gonna have to go over spotted dick and haggis.
Yeah, I thought so. So haggis is a traditional Scottish dish. It's a savoury dish, and it's made up of a sheep's liver, heart, and lungs. So I'm getting you some classy stuff here, Adam.
Yeah.
And it's all minced and mixed together with a beef suet, and then they put it, because they're Scottish and they do things like this, they season it with onions and they put it into a sheep's stomach and they boil it. And that is haggis. And a spotted dick is a steamed pudding made with suet and diced fruit. And then it's served with custard. So, spotted dick and custard, why not? And the spots are the currants that go into it. So, yeah, you're halfway through your 50K. You've got spotted dick, you've got haggis, and you've got fish and chips. So I'm going to throw that to you.
At that point, I'm ready to never visit Scotland in my life if that ends up being the consequences, and we're just going to throw the haggis as far as humanly possible away. If with any luck, I might knock out like a competitor with it while I chuck it, but definitely going to toss that. You got to eat the fish and chips hot. I think that's how that goes. So I'm going to hang out at the aid station, crush some fish and chips, and then me and Spotted Dick are going for a walk, because that sounds pretty delicious to enjoy between aid stations. So I think, and also on Food Fight Friday, I always win. I'm always right. So you can pretty much guarantee that answer is correct.
Yeah, no, that sounds a good answer. Do you know, I haven't considered it too much. The only thing I would say is, despite the fact it sounds utterly revolting, haggis is actually pretty nice. So I think I'd have to find some place for the haggis, but I'd be quibble. I think taking the spotted dick is probably the definitely the A1 decision. So personally, I'd be quibbling over whether to have the haggis or the fish and chips
Oh, the fish and chips.
when they're warm. But fish and chips is always good, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yeah, totally. A little bit of tartar on there too, and yeah, totally. I could do that. I don't think I'd be moving very quick afterwards, but that's not the point of the exercise anyway.
No,
Right?
you're only halfway through. You need to warm up.
Exactly. Have you because I love the aid station chat and being in different places. Is there anything in the UK that you come across at aid stations that would be like unique to your area?
Do you know? Because I've done a couple of 50Ks, but they're mainly the 50Ks I've done have been. I'm going to turn this back around. The 50Ks I've done have been. Thanks, Jason, for joining us. The 50Ks I've done have been mainly looped, so it's kind of been stuff your face with sweets and things like that. Some pretty cool sort of shortbreads and things like that you can dive into. I did do the Isle of Wight Challenge last year, which is a 100K event that goes right around the island there. But I don't think there was anything particular. It was all fairly normal stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, not much of an answer on that front. Maybe I need to do some more of these wacky races to find out strange stuff on the aid station. Outside of Food Fight Friday, what sort of stuff have you come across?
You know what? I don't think anything like too wild either. Just as far as like some favorites go, I love when there's pierogies at an aid station. That's always a huge hit with me.
Yeah.
Like quesadillas are pretty good too. Anything with like some cheese melted in there sounds pretty darn delicious. But yeah, it's mostly I've been at classic fare kind of thing, like you said, lots of sweets and like banana bread or whatever and that sort of thing. I had a guest on the podcast many episodes ago now, Sarah Lavender Smith, and she had told me about a race she did in Italy where they had like pasta and wine at each aid station, which would be really hard to run through, but sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah. I can't remember what it's called, but I've heard of that race and it sounds incredible. I'm not sure it'd be exactly the same one, but the one I've heard is a marathon, and you go up one of the mountains in Italy, and they just feed you and give you wine all the way along. It sounds
spectacular.
The one thing I have done, actually thinking of it now, it was a little fun looped event. I think it was only like run for an hour and see how many loops you can do or something. But it's called the mince pie run, and you basically had to eat a mince pie at the end of every lap. And honestly, by lap 10, you were really struggling and didn't want any more mince pies. You're sort of carrying this thing around with you and just sort of eating it before the end. That was quite a fun one.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've done a chicken wing mile before as well, where you do 4 laps around the track and have to eat a chicken wing each time.
That sounds better than mince pies.
Yeah, I think so too. Maybe a few less, which would make things a little easier as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, listen, Adam, thank you for joining me. We're running out of time. Quickly before we go, I want to give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find the podcast and the film festival and all that good stuff.
I really appreciate you having me on, Craig. This was so much fun. And if people want to check out more community trail running, they can do that at communitytrailrunning.com. We've got our 6 shows that we're hosting for the Film Fest as part of the website that you can find easy enough. We've got Crossing Lines on there. We've got the Miller Minutes. And then if you aren't in one of the cities that I'm hosting in, but you want to go hang out with a bunch of trail runners and celebrate our sport, just check out trailfilmfest.com. You can get ticket stars through there as well, obviously, but it's got everywhere in the world that the festival is playing. And if you're still not on that list, reach out to them and host it yourself. It's so much fun.
Fantastic. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running Tales podcast. Folks, go and check out Community Trail Running. It's a fantastic show. And you only need to find 15 to 20 minutes, and you've just found an hour of this, so you can do that. Everybody, thank you again. Please check out all the other shows on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network. Give us a positive rating review wherever you listen. We're really trying to grow this community so we can have more fantastic chats like the one I've had today. Had the pleasure to have today with Adam. And we'd love to see you all again in a couple of weeks for Running Tales. And in the meantime, for all the other fantastic shows, including Food Fight Friday at the Aid Station. So, hope to see you all soon. And thanks again for joining us for another Running Tales.